someday. When I pass on, you'll be waiting for me at the Rainbow Bridge.
Well, we do know this, Tony, that any animal that is loved by a human being will survive the grave. In other words, we will be with those animals again because they do have a soul. God created them with a soul. And the fact that they were loved by human beings assures them that they will be with us someday.
I mean, what would heaven be without them?
I know.
I
I had
mean,
another dog named Lucy that lived about a year with me.
Just
I found on Route 84, a border collie. I found her on Route 84 on July 5th. I think the year was 1994. She died 1 year to the day, July 5th, 1995. And she was a great dog too. That was with me all the time. Anywhere I went, she went with me. When you lose an animal, it's almost worse than losing a human being. I mean, a lot of people out there have lost human beings. Ed has lost everyone in his family. Lorraine has lost almost everyone in her family. I've lost everyone in my family, but it hurts the same as if it was a human. But that solace that Ed said, they will be there waiting for us. That's the thing that we cling to. And I hope that everybody out there who has lost an animal recently believes this, because it is true that they will be waiting for you. On a lighter note, I think it's a lighter note, we're going to talk about Japan. Ed was in Japan in 45, Ed, or 46?
45.
Right, 45.
1943 to 1946, he was in the United States Navy as an armed guard, World War II. And he spent time in Japan, in Nagoya, and I believe you said Tokyo. You'll talk about it.
Yes.
But 55 years later, Ed and Lorraine go back to Japan. Ed's there during the war. He sees destruction all around him. Everything's different. It's just a nightmare back then. He goes back 55 years later with Lorraine to investigate hauntings. Why don't you tell us about it, Ed?
Well, it was so different than what I expected, Tony. You know, when I was there, I was on Okinawa. The war was over because of the atom bomb, and we didn't expect it to be over. We were already putting numbers on our ships, you know, for the invasion of Japan. One day a small LST pulled up, and this was in late August, and said that some bomb was dropped on Japan and that it was going to end the war. Well, we didn't really believe it. Not until the second time we heard it. And of course it was a horrible thing that occurred. I wish it never had to occur because the Japanese people are beautiful people. And Lorraine found this out when we went to Japan. And understand that it's not the people of these countries that start these wars. It's the warlords, the warmongers, the politicians. These are the ones that are responsible. But when I seen Japan 56 years later, I was amazed. I was shocked. Because these cities that had been bombed out, nothing but rubble, nothing but smokestacks in some cases standing, people starving, rags. Now we go back and here are these beautiful, magnificent, modern buildings, the streets, the cars, all brand new. The people were very beautiful.
Oh, they
Lorraine
were.
and I.
I have to tell you, Tony, before we even go into these cases, I have to tell you that this one day we traveled with an interpreter constantly. That interpreter never left us. But after I was with the Japanese people for a period of time, it's almost like you cross over that barrier and you are able to communicate to
You
a
can almost
certain...
understand them.
Yes, you do. And maybe you don't understand the language, but it's not the language. It's just, you are just able to communicate. And this one night, I had said to them the whole story about Ed, you know, being right off Okinawa, about, I didn't tell him the numbering of the ships for the invasion. I didn't get into things like that. But I was told about the war ending. And he was a naval gunner, so he would have been, you know, had to do something else. So they came aboard ship and they asked if anybody in the gunners knew anything about voice radio. And he said he did. And they sent him to Nagoya and he lived with the army. Now, there was nothing standing, but there was one building, Tony, and it belonged to Mitsubishi, and it was a warehouse. And they had their office in the Mitsubishi, and it was a warehouse. And they had their office in this warehouse. I can go back over Ed's letters then, with the windows that he spoke on that looked out on the harbor and like that. And he lived with them, ate with them and all. But everything outside of that was just rubble with smokestacks. And so I told him this, and I said, if I could just go and stand on that pier and look out at that harbor on the South Pacific, as my husband had 55 years ago.
And your wife was born that night.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't that something?
Yes. I said, that would mean the world to me, why I'm here, if I could do that. Never knowing what they were going to
Let me
do.
just interject. My wife,
Our
Judy,
daughter.
is Ed and Lorraine's daughter.
Yes.
So when Ed was over in that building in Mitsubishi, Japan, in the building, on January 11th, 1946,
He was
that's when
notified.
Judy was born.
Yes, 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 January 11th, 1946. And we're there maybe a little over a week later, and we're right in the same spot where he was notified. And the first thing it said as he stood there, when they finally took us there, is, this is right where I stood when I was notified my daughter was born.
And how did I celebrate? I had a plum pudding.
Plum pudding?
It was midnight when the Army notified me with a telegram that she had been born. And the strange thing was that at that same time, Japanese were celebrating their birthdays. 20-year-olds.
That's a
It's
big
everybody's
celebration.
birthday at that time.
Really?
And there was 2 destroyers out in the harbor. They were firing off rockets and so forth.
Yeah.
So Judy was born that night. It was a huge celebration for Japanese people in their 20s. And it was a real holiday.
Wow, that's wild.
So that's how I remembered it. And then when we went back, of course, I'd never expected the building to be standing.
It was.
That one building was still there intact the way I had left it 56 years ago.
That's amazing.
We're going to be showing you later in the
Okay,
program.
so what's the first thing we're going
We
to
have
talk
an
about?
exciting program tonight. And it entails 3 different cases, Tony. One is a condominium.
No, they're apartments, honey, really.
Condominiums.
Well, they call them condos
Yeah.
over there. Yeah, they call them coops.
Apartment houses. I think we can show the first
Well,
pictures there. And
Okay,
Yes, that's our crew.
That's
that's our crew.
Yeah, that's our crew. Well, we're at the Bullet Terminal. We traveled on the Bullet train from Tokyo
Right.
to Nagoya, and then from
Okay, so that's all the TV crew?
that's not all of them. We're going to still pick up more.
They're all in the TV crew.
Yeah, we're going to pick up the cameramen, but
Okay, let's
that's
just go to next.
and that's it.
Who are those 2 strangers?
That's Ed and I at the terminal in Tokyo. We're in Nagoya. We're in Nagoya there,
Okay.
at the terminal in Nagoya. Now,
Now, is that the apartment?
Yes, it is. And we meet up with our crew, and then we go to this particular apartment building, Tony.
Okay.
Now, it's being built in 2 parts. That's on the left-hand side of the road. It's a road now, but it wasn't a road then. It was only a driveway, as it was explained to us. On the other side, across the street, the building is yet to be lived in, but it is basically the same type of building. Now, in one of these photographs, you're going to see Mr. Tanako, who was the building manager.
Should I go to the next one?
No, leave it there.
Leave it there. And he was able, in Japanese, and we're all sitting on the floor. Tony, that is something to get used to.
I think I should tell him what happened in this building, though.
Well, he's going to tell us, honey. That's what I said. We're going to tell
Who's
him
gonna
what.
The manager.
Well, the manager is going to tell us of all of these experiences, Tony, that people have had in all different apartments, and himself.
And himself. Now, there was a samurai warrior whose head had been seen floating in a small building right across from this one, which we'll show you later. And this was the first sighting of this particular ghost. Now, samurai warriors, of course, were top dogs in them days. They would go into a village, and they were the law. They were the executioners. They were the judges. And then the head started appearing in this building, but not just the head of the samurai warrior. There was a woman who had hung herself. They would see a young couple who had been killed there. There was numerous ghosts that would show up here. But on that property, there was also many people buried alive because of the
Cholera.
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 Animals and people were buried alive right where that building is.
Wow.
And we believe that that's had a lot to do with the hauntings occurring there. You can pull down the next one, Tony. There's the little building right there
It's right across
where
the street.
the head of the samurai warrior was first seen.
That's
And you can see the new complex of buildings right across, which are being built now, which we feel is also
going to be
going to
affected.
be haunted.
Yes.
Next or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony. Now, that's the man in charge. You notice that we're sitting on the floor to talk.
Right.
Take our shoes off
Right?
as soon as we walk in. Tony, none of these buildings
I thought I'd
have-
need an ambulance to get me out of there after an hour of sitting on that floor next to this.
Oh, boy.
Tony, that takes some getting used to. I mean, the Japanese people, they can squat to do everything. And
We
it's
mean
like-
everything.
and
Yeah, I get you, Ed. I know what you mean.
and but
You don't have a picture of that, do you? Of the
no,
bathroom?
we didn't bring one of them, of the loo.
That must have been fun.
But anyway, that's painful to do when you're not used to it. That man was a very, very beautiful person.
Now, who is he?
That's
This guy?
Mr. Tanaka. He was the building manager.
Tanaka, yeah.
Mr. Tanaka. And he too had phenomena occurring in his apartment where he stood so frightened and watched the curtains, like something or someone pull the curtains back and forth in his apartment. And he was so scared of what was going to be on the other side when that curtain opened. He thought he was going to see. He has never seen that head. He has seen the spirit of this woman who took her life. He has seen things move. We talked to numerous people. A lot of young couples live in those condos. And he had a great deal of knowledge regarding the history of the area as it appeared. Now, what I had discerned, Tony, in one of these photographs, you'll see it, is the fact that,
You're going to go to the next photo.
yeah, oh, that's in the back, and that's where the water is. And anyway,
This is also where the bodies were buried
buried.
of the people, buried alive. And Lorraine could feel the
Oh, it's
vibrations
awful.
of these people. And when you walk through those buildings, even though I'm not sensitive, I could feel many things in there.
Good.
And this is where we had to bring in the Buddhist disciples and priests who were to perform the exorcisms in that area.
And they were going to do it, Tony. It entailed not just the buildings, it entailed doing something about the whole perimeter of these apartments, because that's where everything was going on. We interviewed many, many young families and children, these darling little children. God, they were precious little kids.
Next time.
But that
Okay,
is
let
a
me go to
real
the- let me go to the
bad
next
area
slide
right
now.
there. Real bad area.
Okay, now we got another one.
Oh, okay. Now, while we were there at the condos, before we go into, that's the tunnels where we're going to be going the next day. But while we were there, Tony, you could feel the coldness, you could sense the areas, and it seemed to be drawn a lot to the apartments where there were children. The spirits can use the energy of these kids. We were not able to stay long enough for the Buddhist priest to completely do that whole perimeter of the apartments. But this, we were here for
There's
the
that snow on the
exorcism.
ground
I've
there, too.
never,
Oh, yes, we
I've
were
never
high.
been in a colder place in my life than I went to that tunnel that
Really?
night.
Oh, it was terrible.
And scary, I'll tell you, if we say it was scary, it was
It's
scary.
scary.
It was
I remember
terrible.
that 200 people were buried alive in that tunnel 35 years ago. An avalanche came down.
during the
of mud.
typhoon.
They tried to escape into the tunnel, but what it did was trap them in there. On certain nights, people could hear the screams, the yells, the moans of these people. The horror which must have occurred there was horrific. When we went in there that night, I walked away from the cam crew and I went down to the other end.
Yeah.
And I've never felt anything like that. You know about the tunnels in Fairfield Hills. This is 100 times worse.
Really?
Yes. Now these people, Japanese, would come over the mountain before they built that tunnel. That's why they built it. They had salt, and they used to bring it over to other villages on this side.
From the salt
let me
mines.
see the next one, Tony.
From the salt mines,
Yeah.
Tony. Oh, look
now
at this,
we
Tony.
see ghost globules. This is entering the tunnel again, but if you look off on the right, you'll see all white ghost globules.
Yep.
These are spirits. And I think the next one also has
That's on
another
from the
picture of
other
God.
side. Yes, that's the other side.
That's coming out the other side?
Yes,
That's
that's
the other
coming
side.
out the other side, and that's where the salt mines are, right back there. Also,
So you had a funny
I
feeling
have
in
to
there?
tell you that.
oh, Tony, I was
Can I have the next
tears.
picture, Tony?
The tears were coming right down my face. I had no control whatsoever.
Now, the flowers that you see here on the floor of that tunnel were put there because of a young man. About 3 months ago, he defied the cursed tunnel. He thought it was a joke. He took his motorcycle through there at midnight.
Oh.
His friend standing at the other end heard screams and a crash. They went into the tunnel. He had been decapitated. The chain of his motorcycle had come off, decapitated his head, and this is where he laid right here.
That's his friends had been there to put the
You
flowers
don't
down.
challenge evil, and this particular tunnel has a lot of evil in it.
That's-
Okay, that's how, before, Tony, that tunnel was there. That is where, what they would use. They would go over that mountain.
That's the top of the tunnel today.
They would go over that mountain with their horses. And so the tunnel was built so they had a place to go through. But today there's a much bigger tunnel that has been built. And one of the reasons is because of the horrors that had taken place in that old tunnel.
That area is so haunted, Tony, that people will not go up there at night.
No.
This foolish young man that went through the motorcycle, you know how young people are.
Yeah.
Well, they're no different in Japan.
No, they're not.
And it was a challenge, but he paid with his life for it.
No,
People say, well, a ghost can't hurt you.
Right.
You're not dealing with just ghosts here.
no, you're not dealing.
Look at this.
That's it.
There's
That
the
is
tunnel.
spooky looking, huh?
Oh, it is
If
spooky
you were in
looking.
that tunnel all by yourself at night, I walked down to the further end, away from the camera crew, and like I said, I've never felt such bitter cold, iciness. And while we were in there, the Buddhist disciples came in, were saying the rituals of exorcism. Suddenly, we heard a huge crash about 5 foot away from us. Heavy ice came down, all of a sudden broke right in front of us. I never seen anything
Ooh.
like it.
But there
And
was
that
no
so bitter
thaw.
cold.
But no
No
thaw at
thaw.
all. I
No
can't.
thaw at all.
No thaw.
Now,
at
if
all.
anybody had been standing there, they could have been killed. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a warning for us to get out. But the disciples stayed there until the exorcism was over. And these people had white robes on.
Mm-hmm.
We were bundled up, sweaters, heat pads under us, top coats, hats. These monks will go in zero weather under a waterfall with just a sheet on. They will walk out and they will dry themselves through mind over matter.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's amazing.
Okay, can I see
I
the
don't.
next
I don't
one?
think I'm going to try that.
No,
No, I
no,
don't
no,
think I'd
no,
try
no,
it
no.
either.
That takes a tremendous discipline, Tony. That's our interpreter. What a beautiful girl.
What's her name?
That's Reiko.
Reiko?
That's Reiko,
Is
yes.
the one Ed was chasing around all the time?
No, he
Okay,
did
so-
like her, though. She was a very sweet, nice girl.
In this picture as well.
Okay, now on the other side of the tunnel, Tony, this is a memorial, a Buddhist memorial that has been put up by people, and they come there and they pay homage. They light these little candles. They, the same as we probably do in our Catholic faith. They leave flowers and like that, mainly for the people who have been killed, and ran into so terrible
me know when you want.
misfortune. Okay, now some of these is going to go into an exorcism,
Here's another
Tony,
one. Here's
Now,
another.
this is an exorcism that we're involved with.
at the temple.
This is a Buddhist shrine, and Lorraine is standing at the entrance of it right now. When we entered, there were at least 4 what they call disciples, and there was one man who was a master of karate and judo. What would they call him?
Martial arts, like a
martial
sensei.
arts,
Sensei.
right.
Yes.
He is not a man that you would fool around with, Tony. Could I see the next one?
Yes.
He was there to protect the priests.
Oh, that's us with the, that's the head Buddhist exorcist there. Now, that's the Reverend.
That's Reverend June's wife.
That's Reverend June's wife.
Yes.
Do you remember
Now
Reverend
she's
June?
bald-headed, but
Yeah, vaguely.
Yes.
that's a sign of that she is not vain. But this
Is that
woman
what that's,
here
Yes,
is a-
that's what, yes.
is a very holy, pious,
All
and
her.
knowledgeable individual.
Beautiful,
Next.
beautiful person. Reverend June has passed away. Reverend June is a man.
Is that the karate master right
Yes,
there?
that's the karate master.
Kneeling
He
down?
is a master, yes.
Yes, yes. Gentle, very. These people are so gentle. They're so honorable. I mean, in general, I'm talking the Japanese people. But to be with these people and to be in this temple, oh, that was just absolutely wonderful.
Now remember that we can't speak Japanese.
Oh.
They can't speak English. But somehow
We got through.
we got the word through, and we had our interpreter with us. But you talk, as like Lorraine said, very gentle people. You can't imagine dropping bombs on them, and I'm sure they couldn't imagine
no.
dropping bombs on us. All you have to do, Tony, is to be with people like this for a week, your so-called enemies, and suddenly you're not enemies anymore.
No.
You're friends, and we'll always be friends with them.
Oh,
Next,
yeah.
please.
But, you know, I would look at the little children and I would leave people. The first one being, oh, yeah, there she is again with Ed and I. And that's, like Ed said, that's Reverend June's wife, the Reverend, and she is
Her
wonderful.
husband came here about 8 years ago
Yes, he
and
did.
performed an exorcism
In Massachusetts,
in
honey.
Massachusetts and
And I
helped us
worked.
with that.
I worked with him. This
What are they
is the
doing here?
rite. That's the rite of exorcism, Tony, in the Buddhist temple.
You see two people there. They're under possession right now. One by what we call a snake demon. This person would slither along the floor, the tongue darting in and out, acting just like a snake. But these people here are so knowledgeable. You know, you talk about a Catholic priest going in and performing an exorcism. He's like a child compared to them.
Oh, you can't
Their
believe-
knowledge is so great, so much more do they know than any priest in the United States. But they have different methods.
Mm-hmm.
But as I often said, their exorcisms, their prayers go to the same God our exorcisms do.
Mm-hmm.
We just
We gotta-
call them by different names.
We got about 2.5 minutes left, so maybe we'd like to just finish these slides up
All
on,
right,
on
go
this
ahead.
show.
Go ahead, Tony.
So what is this one? The same?
And now this is this again is during the Buddhist exorcism.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, this is the very beginning stages of it, right there,
Okay.
where they three of them on that side were kneeling and starting
notice
the
they're
prayers.
blindfolded.
They're all
Yes,
blindfolded.
They're
They're blindfolded, Tony, because the eyes are the mirror of the soul. And what is in the eyes of those people you don't want to see.
Right.
No, no,
right.
no, you don't. All right.
This is her again?
That's yes. That's the Reverend June and the
Okay,
martial
let's-
arts
Let's
master.
go on to the next
yes.
picture.
And that at the end, after they have cast the spirits, or done what they could to cast the spirits out, then they build this bonfire, Tony,
Yeah.
supposedly to help the spirits to leave and to go off into the heather, whatever. the
Okay.
ethnic-
Into
yes.
the ether world.
Or now, these
Who are these two guys?
this is us in the Goya at the spot where Ed was 55 years before at the very same time,
Now
Tony.
that's us today.
That's
Where-
you guys. Oh, of course.
Now if you go
Now,
to the
Oh, wait a
next-
minute. Next picture is let's get the next picture.
this is Ed and I.
Who's that?
That's
No, that's you, Lorraine.
that's
not
me.
not Ed and you, that's you, Lorraine.
That's
me.
not me, Lorraine.
No, that's
You know what?
me. All right, wait.
I know he. I don't think he can get both, but look at this, huh?
That is as we looked
Ah,
at that
look at that.
time.
How old were you there, Ed? How old?
18.
You,
18 years
yeah,
old.
you were
18 in that
still
picture.
18, and I was 18. We
And
were
a week,
both.
it was only a week after this picture was taken that I was a survivor. I was on a ship which was going out on a convoy out to the North Atlantic. When one of the ships rammed our ships, it caught on fire. A lot of Navy
People.
men died that day, and
Well,
it
this
was
shows-
February 5th.
This show is dedicated to them also. All
Yes,
the
it
men
is.
well,
Yes,
who
it
gave
is.
their lives.
Yes.
Yes.
We're basically out of time, but you know, anyone who wants to write into us, and Ed especially, if anybody was in the U.S. Navy Armed Guard, 43, 44, 45, World War II. Ed would
Oh.
love to hear from you guys, because there's
Love
not that
to.
many of you left.
No.
And we just want to say, and Ed too, that we appreciate all you did for us to keep us free. And we know it was hell.
They said to Ed,
We have to wrap it up.
Okay.
P.O. Box 41,
Monroe,
Monroe,
Connecticut.
Connecticut, for Ed Warren, for Lorraine Warren, for